In this video, we're going to take a look at practice quiz for standard number 10, properties of parallelograms. In number 1, it says solve the parallelogram for x and y. So let's take a look at what we are given. We're given some angles of the parallelogram. So if we think about the properties of a parallelogram that relate to our angles, we know that opposite angles are congruent. And so 124 we know would equal 2y minus 8, and that will help me solve for y. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to add the 8 to both sides, so I get 132 equals 2y, and then just divide by 2. So I quickly get y equals 66. And then I just need to get x. So x, I could solve a couple different ways, but I know consecutive angles, ones that are beside each other in a parallelogram, are supplementary. So I'm going to say 124 plus 4x equals 180 to solve for x. So let's subtract 124, and we would get 4x equals 56, and then divide by 4, so x would just equal 14. All right, so let's write down those properties. For this one, I used consecutive angles are supplementary. That helped me to solve for x. And this one, for y, I used that opposite angles are congruent. Since the picture had angles labeled, you just wanted to focus on the properties that deal with your angles. All right, let's take a look at number 2. It says the diagonals of a rectangle have lengths 3 plus 9x and 2x plus 24. So properties of a rectangle include the fact that the diagonals of a rectangle are congruent. So that will help us to solve this problem. So I can say that 3 plus 9x is equal to 2x plus 24. But keep in mind, you're asked to find the length of the diagonal. So once you get x, you've got to plug it back in to get the length of your diagonal. So let's first figure out x. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. I get 3 plus 7x equals 24. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, so I get 7x equals 21. And I'm going to divide by 7, and I get x equals 3. Make sure you don't stop right there. You do plug it back in, and it doesn't matter which one you plug it into because they're equal to each other. So let's see, I'm just going to choose 2x plus 24. So 2 times 3 plus 24 would be 6 plus 24, which is 30. All right, let's take a look at number 3. It says ABCD is a parallelogram. If AB equals 5x plus 1, CD equals 3x plus 9, and AD equals 7x minus 1. Find the length of AD. So I noticed they have not labeled the picture, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. AB is 5x plus 1. CD is 3x plus 9. And AD is 7x minus 1. So I still need to use the properties of a parallelogram that state that opposite sides are congruent to help me get started. So opposite sides are congruent means 5x plus 1 equals 3x plus 9 would help me solve for x. In other words, you don't need that 7x plus 1 yet, but we will in a minute. It's just kind of extra at the moment, but we'll need it when we're done solving for x. All right, let's subtract 3x from both sides. We get 2x plus 1 equals 9. Let's subtract 1, so we get 2x equals 8, and divide by 2, so we get x equals 4. But again, make sure you answer the question they ask in each of these problems on your quiz, and it says give the length of AD. So I need to take what I got for x, and I don't want to circle that because that's not the answer. I'm going to plug that into what's over here for AD and write that down. So AD equals 7x minus 1. So that's 7 times 4 minus 1, which is 28 minus 1. So AD just equals 27. Now that is my final answer, so I'm going to put a box around it. Let's look at number 4. 4 says, given ABCD is a rhombus, find x, y, and z. Okay, so there's lots of good things about a rhombus that we know. very quickly, I know that these diagonals are perpendicular. Diagonals are perpendicular, which means that all of these angles in the middle right here are 90 degrees, which makes y really easy to find. So y is 90 degrees. Another property that I know to be true is that the diagonals bisect these angles that are in the corners, or they're in your vertex of the figure. So I know, let's write the diagonals, and you don't have to write this on your quiz, I'm just doing it to help you study the properties again. This is what's going to help you solve the problem. So diagonals bisect the vertex angles, like those corner angles, if you want to think of it that way. So I know 3z plus 1 is equal to 43, and that'll help me to get z. So let's subtract 1, and we get 3z equals 42, and divide by 3, so we get z is equal to 14. All right, so I've got z, I've got y, I need x. So since I know that z is 14, and I know this angle is 43, that means these would also be 43 over here on this side of my figure. And that's going to help me figure out my x, because this triangle that's sitting in the corner of my rhombus, any triangle, but this one is the one we're looking at right now, adds up to 180 degrees. So I know that x is just going to be 180 minus the 90 that we have right there, and minus that 43. And so that would turn out to be 47 degrees. All right, so we've got x, y, and z all solved for. Let's take a look at the last question. It says, given PQRS is a trapezoid, find x. All right, and they've labeled these two legs of your trapezoid as being equal. That's what that tick mark means. So that means this is an isosceles trapezoid, because those two legs are equal, which will help us with this problem, because they said that PR is 40. And they said SQ is 3x minus 20. And because this is an isosceles trapezoid, those diagonals are congruent. If we did not know it was isosceles, though, they are not necessarily congruent. So that was an important piece of information they gave us with those tick marks. So I'm going to just say 40 is equal to 3x minus 20. And let's add 20 to both sides. So we get 60 equals 3x, and divide by 3. So x is equal to 20. And just make sure that's what they're asking you for. So it says, given PQRS is a trapezoid, find x. So yes, that's all we needed for this one. We don't have to plug it back in. All right, that's it for practice quiz number 10.